I'm Susan Noyes, the founder of Make It Better Media Group, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce you to our guest, Mitch Daniels, president of Purdue University, former governor of the great state of Indiana, author, businessman, 50-year motorcyclist, husband to Sherry, father to 4 daughters, and more. By the way, Mitch retired from motorcycle driving last year at the insistence of the women in his life, and he is retiring from Purdue at the end of this year. As governor, Mitch facilitated state laws and policies that fostered significant alternatives to traditional public school models, like vouchers and charter schools. And as Purdue president, Mitch reduced the cost of education per student during a decade when the cost of education rose exponentially elsewhere. He developed routes for talented, underserved students to gain entry to an outstanding education, and significantly raised the endowment and the fundraising each year. As a leader in general, his style is a bit unorthodox, but always engaging. And we know that Mitch has excellent common sense advice for others interested in better educations for a broader swath of our population too. And that's why we invited him here for this fireside chat today. If you have questions for us, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, please watch for this video and additional articles to follow soon in Make It Better TV, MIB TV, on better.net, and through our Better Letters, weekly email newsletters. Now, let's please welcome Governor and President Mitch Daniels. Hi, Mitch. Thanks so much for joining. Let's cut to the chase. Please tell us about that unorthodox leadership style that has fostered so much success, please. And then we'll eventually segue to the education components of this talk.
I'm not sure what you're getting at. But when you say unorthodox, it may be that I've tried to have a lot of fun along the way, and done some things maybe others wouldn't choose to do. I stayed in a citizens' homes as opposed to hotels during the entire gubernatorial experience, for instance. Spent a lot of time hanging around with students here at the university. And, it's, as I say, I've generally found that work is more productive when it's a little bit of fun, but the serious purpose there is to try to stay in touch, not be insulated, not let information be filtered on its way to you. And so I hope it's served a pragmatic purpose, even as I tried to involve a little levity in what has always been, I hope, work we taken seriously.
Right. Well, if you take offense to the word unorthodox, I apologize for that. It has always been engaging and I think inspiring, and as you say, a little bit of fun. Can you talk about some of in addition to staying with citizens as you were campaigning, can you talk about some of the other places where you brought real levity and fun and humor to your work?
Oh, if you would count entering the commencement ceremony with some students who built on the motorized couch built by a couple of our engineering students. Maybe you would count wearing a shark suit in the student section along with several of our students who came to support our football team that way. Obviously I rode the motorcycle all over the state when the weather would permit it. And by the way, I always found motorcycling, I've recommended it to people as one of the places left where a person can meet people of absolutely every walk of life, every station of life on totally common ground. Everybody dresses the same, has the same interest. There are too few pursuits like that anymore. So I don't know if that gets at your question. By the way, unorthodox is a perfectly positive word to me. I just wanted to make sure I was being responsive.
You were very responsive, and I love that example. And that's, maybe I better go get a motorcycle too. I have to think about this. My son has one of those Peugeot old fashioned, it's not really a motorcycle, and I have a blast riding that. So maybe that's the right step for me at this stage of my life. I also know that you interact with students in a really significant way as president. I think, more so than most university presidents. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, it's while it's a lot of fun, it's to me, I've always thought it was important. I've usually said to stay in touch with the ground floor of whatever pursuit one's involved in. And when I was in business, which was the longest stretch really of my working days, I always blocked time off on the calendar, get out of the office, go see the people who made the product, sold the product, bought the product, paid for the product. Again, just to make certain that you were aware of problems and shortcomings and heard the bad news as well, hopefully even sooner than the good news. And so I've applied that, I think, here at Purdue also. I had dinner last night with a bunch of students. I've done this many times. Last week, I took pizza to surprise a group that I had discovered had found a way to have the least expensive room on campus by ganging up 8 guys in what had been a dormitory lounge. So, by the way, I think it's a way for me to stay optimistic. There's a lot to worry about in our society these days, but when closer I am to the young people, at least that populate this place, the more positive I feel about our future.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we all need as much to feel good about in the future as we can get. And that example with the pizza is a perfect opportunity to segue to one of your many accomplishments as president, which is actually having the cost of education go down during a decade when most universities had expenses going in that direction. Please, give us some advice. Give the world advice about how to do that.
This is one of those, as we say, FAQs. And it's probably the MFAQ, if that's a term most frequently asked. Yes, it's true that the tuition here for all students, Indiana, out of state, and international, has been held constant since I've been here. And in addition, room and board costs have been slightly reduced. And so it is literally true that it is less expensive to attend our university in unadjusted dollars, nominal dollars, than it was in 2012. So people want to know if there's a trick. I've taken, Susan, to answering this question by trying to dispel the natural suspicions people have. No, we didn't get more money from the state. No, we didn't shift to less expensive faculty. Our tenure track percentage is one of the highest in the country. And no, we didn't flood the place with international students. We've actually brought that percentage down substantially for a variety of reasons over these years. No, it was simply a matter of what one prioritizes. I've sometimes expressed it by saying that we try to solve the equation for zero. We simply ask ourselves at the beginning of every year, what would it take to avoid an increase? And when any large organization can become aligned around a common goal that people are enthusiastic about and willingly trying to participate in, you'd be surprised what can happen. So anyway, it's fair to say that there's been a sort of a self-reinforcing aspect of this, which is that we're 30% bigger than we were when this all started. And we know that many, not all, but many of those students were attracted by the fact that we are a high value or high quality for an affordable price, and you are much less likely to get surprised with an annual increase here. So those are some of the elements that went into it, but it is something we feel is very consistent with our assignment as a land grant university to broaden access to higher education. By the way, we like to note that if we had raised our fees at the same level as the national average or the Big Ten average, by now we would have charged our families more than $1 billion more than we did. And that, to us, better that the money stayed in their pockets and in the pockets of those young people as they start life.
And I believe another remarkable thing to note is that the quality of the education has also grown at the same time cross has been held out. We've watched Purdue rise in the various rankings. I'd love to say I'm not sure if it's a question, but it's a comment. This reminds us why Illinoisans should value our Hoosier neighbors. If you have any advice specifically for Illinoisans, we welcome them.
I always get in trouble when the subject of Illinois comes up. I did in the last job. People were always drawing contrasts, and sometimes I made some wisecracks that maybe I shouldn't have. I remember one time on Chicago radio, once again, they compared fiscal and ethical and business conditions and so forth between the two states, and asked me about that. What's it like? And I said, oh, it's like living next door to the Simpsons. And that line has been repeated back to me often over the course of the years. I'm happy to tell you, by the way, that although Illinois has always been the number one state among those sending students to Purdue, that's really gone up in recent years. In last year's freshman class, we had over 1,000 Illinoisans, if that's what you call them. When I see them on campus, which happens all the time, given how numerous they are, I'll usually say something like, oh, a refugee, welcome to Indiana. We have a generous asylum policy here, and they know what I'm talking about.
That's fantastic. I know that my children's school district also which is a very high quality one, New Trier High School, they are sending more and more students very proudly to Purdue too. Could you talk about some of the new programs that also have been developed under your leadership?
Well, there are a number to choose from. One, I suppose, that's attracted a lot of attention was we made a big move into the adult education space. We acquired what had been known as Kaplan University, converted it into a public institution now called Purdue Global, where we're serving about 36,000 students. And to us, this was important because it brings a Purdue education to a completely different universe of people. Almost all the students at Purdue Global are adults. Most of them attempted college and didn't finish. A majority are minorities. A majority are women, large majority, and many are veterans or active duty military. And our view is that we cannot completely fulfill the land grant mission that I talked about a minute ago in the 21st century if we stop at age 22 or 25 or 26 or graduate school. And so we're very proud to have begun this new venture, which again we think is consistent with and continuous with our historic assignment. Another example at the other end of the educational spectrum is what we call Purdue Polytechnic High Schools. Next year, we will open our fourth. This was direct action on our part to address the problem everybody is working on. How do we find ways to bring more low-income, first-generation, and minority students into higher education? And I finally decided that if we waited on the public school systems of this and other states to produce enough such students for us, we would never get there. And so we started our own high schools to build our own pipeline. It's working very, very well, and it has more than doubled in its first graduating class, first two graduating classes now, well more than doubled the total number of such students we were receiving from the Indianapolis public schools. So there are a couple examples at either end of the traditional 18 to 22-year-old college that we all think about, where we have attempted to fulfill our duties in new and different ways.
So, and I want to make this really clear. The students being selected for the Polytechnic high schools are coming from the underserved communities, and they may not have even earned the opportunity to go to Purdue or another school, but they've been identified as talented, particularly in the STEM space. Is that correct?
Not quite, because these are charter schools, so we can't select or cherry pick or identify. We simply have placed the schools in neighborhoods of demonstrable need, where there are many such students. And but then, as happens to charter schools all over the country, we're oversubscribed, and we sort of take the first of those to apply. But it produces a student body, much like you just described. And our compact is for those who maintain a suitable grade point average, they will be admitted to Purdue. But they operate as other charters do, and proudly so.
So let's segue to the broader charter school population. And you had you did a little work in that space as governor. Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. I'm happy to say that every year when the National Charter School Association issues its rankings, Indiana's number one, has been now for several years in terms of the friendliness of our laws to charter schools. I don't think I need to belabor with this audience the reasons many of us believe, a majority of Americans believe, charter schools are a good idea. They foster innovation, competition. Our Polytechnic high schools, for example, teach in a very different way. It's mainly, it is STEM focused, but it's project-based and team-based. And we find that a lot of inner city young people find this preferable to what they had experienced before. That kind of innovation, I think, is a hallmark of charters, which operate without all the restrictions and limits and union contracts that dominate elsewhere. I like to think of our state as a state of maximum choice. We had the first and largest nearly universal voucher program in the country. It's up over 60,000 students, low-income students, taking advantage of that now, in addition to the charter population. But one thing that's gotten less attention is that we also fashioned our laws so that there's total public school choice, and a student can move from one public school district to another without being charged tuition. And this has, I think, been an extraordinarily healthy thing. We have as many students taking advantage of that as these other avenues. So someone told me recently that we're getting close to a quarter of all the students in our state, K-12 students, in one mode of choice or another, and one of those three approaches. And to the extent that's true, I think that's in the young people's interest.
And have the standardized measurements for success also increased over the years?
Yes. Routinely, I can certainly tell you that our own Purdue high schools the students there are outperforming all the schools around them significantly, and this has been a pattern at most of the charters I'm aware of. Of course, another advantage of the charter system is invariably they don't all work, and when one doesn't, you can close it and give someone else a try, or give those students a chance to go somewhere better performing. That, as we know, is very difficult in the traditional public school context.
We know a little bit about that in Chicago.
Yeah.
I also suspect that parents are just more engaged when their child has earned the opportunity to be in the charter schools.
I
Did you
think that's been
have
proven over and over. It's only natural. After all, they're there as a matter of choice. They must have looked around. They made a conscious decision that this school is better. And so I don't think it's surprising if you do find higher levels of engagement. We know that parental interest, parental support for education is so critical. It's one reason so many young folks today, it's not their fault. It's the one reason that they struggle.
So the more we get the word out about the opportunities for charter schools, the more we get the word out for parents to think about engaging with their child more so in their education, the more we transform lives going up the family as well as just the student's life. So you change a child's life, you change the family's life too. I like going to the other end of the spectrum, serving more quality education to people who don't fit that 18 to 22, who tried elsewhere. When you were governor, did you see initiatives around that, or have you observed that elsewhere? Do you have any advice, not just for other universities, but for policymakers in all states?
I did see it, and it's where I got the idea. I was asked while serving in that last job, early on, I was asked by someone I admired a great deal, former governor of Utah, former cabinet secretary Mike Leavitt, asked me to join the board of Western Governors University, which had been formed in the West, primarily to provide online education, primarily because of the geographic challenges they have out there, those huge wide open spaces. And it was trying to grow. And I thought I could learn a lot. Mike was a hard guy to turn down, but I thought I could learn a lot also. And I did. And before too long, I suggested that we bring that model to Indiana. It became WGU Indiana, sort of a private in business, we would have said a private label approach, and is thriving today, has conferred thousands of degrees on Hoosiers. That model in turn got replicated elsewhere. I don't remember how many, but there's a WGU Texas and a WGU Missouri and so forth. And I learned, first of all, how many people there are who could benefit and would like to benefit by completing an education or adding to whatever education they had, but they're no longer in any position to travel back and live on a campus somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so that was the experience I had that prompted me here to take the steps I described that led to Purdue Global. If you want to understand the opportunity here, and you want to have an emotional experience, just go to YouTube and look at the tape of one of our Purdue Global commencements. You'll see tons of single moms graduating with their kids there to cheer them on. You'll see we've had a grandparent graduate with a granddaughter, I think it was. Most people don't know that there are now more than twice as many folks out there, so-called non-completers, who started higher education and didn't get there to the finish line. More than twice as many of those as all the students on the campuses that we spend so much time fretting about. As you probably know, Susan, the number of students in traditional higher ed has been declining for 10 years, 11 years now. And so there's a huge opportunity for the country, and we think there's a duty for schools like ours to serve that larger population as well.
I love this. And I'd like to point out to our audience that you were governor 10 years ago. This means more than a decade ago, well before the pandemic, you were thinking deeply about online education and creating a program that works and that has been replicated. And this makes me a little bit curious to know what you think the future should be, using that strategic thinking in order to serve more. How should it work?
It's a very timely question because the audience will have seen by now so many stories about the labor shortage and about the mismatch of workers with the jobs of today and tomorrow. And that's why I describe this as an opportunity as much as it is a real challenge. It's both. But, this very day, for instance, there's a big meeting going on between our Purdue Global leadership and the leadership of Indiana's statewide community college. And the subject is how to effect the movement of, let's say, associate degree completers from what we call Ivy Tech to a degree through Purdue Global, or perhaps to some alternative certification. Another thing that we all see going on is that more and more businesses no longer require or are particularly interested in whether an applicant has a bachelor's degree. They've learned over time that many of those degrees didn't necessarily tell you much about what was actually learned by the student. They were using it as a proxy for the smarts and possibly the persistence to get into college in the first place. Now, more and more places are willing to accept or even eager to accept other certifications of ability. Don't tell us we don't care if you finished college or not. Can you code? Mm-hmm. Or, can you manipulate a certain kind of advanced machinery, computer-driven machinery? So that sort of thing. So I said in opening up the meeting to the group that we have to see this as a huge opportunity. There are new businesses and industries coming to states like Illinois, coming to states like Indiana. I'm thinking about semiconductors, for instance. All new, going to require new skills, new understanding, but a big opening for states and their people who can prepare themselves to take advantage. And that preparation very well may not be four-year college as we've known it.
That actually leads to two other questions. And one is, for those traditional four-year colleges, I believe that Purdue has been a leader in understanding how to put STEM and STEAM across the curriculums and create more collaboration, and understanding the computer world for the social scientists and others. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
A lot of that has always been a part of this place. Again, land grant. We were placed here in part to teach what were then called the mechanic arts, and we still do, but in a way we never have before, because of the explicit, urgent national need for technologically trained people and leaders. We have spent these last 10 years becoming more and more STEM centric. So we've gone for the number of or percentage of our undergraduates studying a STEM subject's gone from 41% to 68% in the last decade or a little more. But that came rather naturally to us. Something that we're doing here that I think every school ought to consider. We're trying to make this subject we now call data analytics as ubiquitous at our school as English composition has historically been. It's a language in a way. It's the ability to understand and at least query a database, the kind of information that's now available in such profusion and such sophistication. I've sometimes said we want to turn out people who can build those databases. We want to turn out people who can manipulate them. But short of that, we hope every student from here will at least know how to ask an intelligent question of them and to extract information that makes them or their enterprise more efficient and effective. So, there's something that I believe has to become current, whether you're a STEM-centric school like us or a liberal arts bastion.
Yeah. What is your data telling you? What are your analytics? The people who come to your, to your website, what is it telling you?
Right.
What does the world want more of? What are we putting too much time in? You also mentioned the opportunity for business growing in the tech field. And I know that another hallmark of success in your tenure has been growing business, sort of, as you say, at the perimeter of Purdue. So it's a collaboration between business and academia. Could you talk a little bit about that and give some advice for others who should be thinking about the same thing?
My view, certainly in my previous job, was that in the economy we were quickly evolving into, whereas once the economic hubs, sources of success, a state like yours, a state like ours, were places conducive to manufacturing. They might have been on a river, or they might have been on a highway. And there's still advantages to that. But in the new economy, there was no better hub or place around which to build strong economic activity than a research university. And so I thought one reason I agreed to come to Purdue was I thought we could really be a great example of that. And I believe we have been. We've attracted some major companies, and there are more on the way. Now, I saw that as a duty of a public university that was well positioned to do it, that had generating the talent, the graduates that come out of here every year, 12,000 last year, generating the research that such a company might want to access. That's a second big reason they might choose to invest near us. From our standpoint as a university, this, we believe, is squarely in our self-interest. Again, it provides internships and jobs for our graduates, research opportunities for our faculty, and it's really making the area around our campus more vibrant and lively, more people, more activity. It inevitably leads to retail and entertainment. And this is important because we want to attract, the next great cohort of faculty and so forth, and we have to compete for those people with some places that have a lot of attractive features themselves. So that's the story there. And we just were chosen as the site for a $2 billion semiconductor fabrication facility, which has all those features that I hope you can see. I was just trying to illustrate.
So I won't name names, but we have seen other research universities launch, collaboration vehicles with business and not be as successful, not grown as well. Is there top line advice you could give for what to look for in order to create greater success next time?
Put yourself in the customer's shoes, or in this case, the partner's shoes. We did find here at Purdue, and we still do occasionally, that when we are looking to see if there's a great collaboration opportunity with a given business, the first instinct of some of our faculty, it's very natural, is to say, this is what I do. Let me tell you what I study and what I research. Maybe you're interested. When the right approach was, tell me what your problem is. And then let me see if I or somebody I know here can be of assistance. So I think that's a mentality that comes more naturally to people who are in business all the time. Sometimes not so naturally to people who, to their credit, have developed a whole career focusing on some area of knowledge that they're seeking to advance.
Yeah, they go deep in their own specialty, and they're not necessarily thinking about how to solve important problems in the world with that. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you wouldn't recommend that the professors, the experts, the academic experts, be the first line of contact. It's the administration who understands how to ask, how can we help? What's your problem?
Yeah,
And
well,
then you
I wouldn't say that's always the case.
some
I, let
funding.
me,
Oh,
I got
okay.
to say something in defense of, of so many of our faculty. I mean, a whole other uh, aspect of this was that we had a lot of faculty. I've come to estimate maybe a third who had an interest or a potential interest in commercializing something they'd worked on, in tech transfer, as we call it, in entrepreneurial activity. And we restructured this place in a major way, its policies, its support systems, and its incentive systems to make that easier and more likely to happen. So there's an example where administrative practices were in the way of
Okay.
faculty who were eager to do things that made a direct positive impact on the outside world.
And I think that Harvard and MIT and Stanford all realize the importance to organize around creating entrepreneurial opportunities for their great researchers. Purdue might have been a little bit ahead of the curve in that one too. With respect to
Without picking on anybody, we measure things like patents and startup companies. We're always in the top handful in the country. We were sixth in the world in patents in the most recent year, and we find ourselves very frequently ahead of a couple of the universities you just mentioned.
While keeping the cost of the education down, growing opportunities for your staff, and we touched on a little bit at the beginning. Let's talk about fundraising and endowments. Do you have a success story to share there?
We do. It's not. I like to think of it as a follow-on consequence of other things. I believe that. I don't believe. We have clear evidence that our alumni base, in particular, very, very feels good about the affordability policy that we've pursued. And actually, the thing I'm most gratified about in terms of fundraising here is not the totals, which are much, much higher, and that's a good thing, but the percent of that money that has been given for scholarships and student support has skyrocketed. And I think this is our alums reacting very favorably to seeing that ours is a university that's trying to produce high value for its students, and also one that if they support a student with scholarship money, they know it's not all going to be just simply grabbed up by the university itself through higher prices. So yeah, we've had big success raising money, but again, I hope it's, and I know it is, basically the after effect of actions we've taken, reforms that we've implemented, not just a matter of going out and shaking people, rattling the tin cup harder.
Yeah, and for the alums, the successful alums who seem to be ratcheting up, as you say, that they know that they're making it easier to recruit the most talented students. And the future alums are only going to bring greater glory to the institution. So it's a great virtuous circle. There is a wonderful comment. Helping with solutions always wins, a demonstration of great leadership. And we are about to run out of time. I know you only had 45 minutes. I would love to know if there's anything else that you are particularly proud of that you've accomplished as a great leader, or if you have anything else you just want to share with our audience.
Well, let me answer the second question. I'll leave for others to decide how relatively proud or not we should be of anything we've done. I'll just mention one other dimension that troubles many people about higher ed and has been on our mind, and that's protecting the freedom of speech and the freedom of inquiry on our campus. We were rated third in the country, if that matters, by the watchdog group that most people look to on this. We've been tried to be very, very clear about the fact that young people should come here to be taught how to think, not what to think, that they should feel free to express themselves and never intimidated out of doing that, that we've made the point that this is not merely a matter, and I should put merely in quotes, of basic First Amendment American freedom. It's, of course, it's all that. But if you think about it, the freedom of inquiry, the freedom of the heretic or the dissident to express her or his differing point of view, new theory, challenge the accepted wisdom in whatever field, that's how knowledge advances. And when there is no debate, when there is either homogeneity through self-selection or enforced conformity, where people who have a different view are afraid to say it, then knowledge stops advancing. So it's wrong when people anywhere are bullied out of speaking their mind or holding their views. It's doubly, I think, injurious to our republic and our society when it happens on a university campus. So we've worked hard on that. I think we've stayed true to that. But work remains to be done there, because such limitations on that freedom are far, far, far too prevalent on campuses today.
Well, and far, far, far too prevalent in all of our governing institutions. Mm-hmm. So you are modeling what we hope to revert back to what used to be, including in the great state of Indiana back in the day. We need to bring that back again. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you. I can't wait to see the content that flows from this. Your advice is outstanding, and your time is very valuable. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
It went quickly. Thanks for having me.
My